Welcome back, everyone, and welcome, Mary Sue. By the way, before the break, I think I said this was going to be about writing goals. I mean, setting goals. We're setting goals for juniors. So, all right. So speaking of, Mary Sue, when you are working with your juniors, and I know you work with plenty of juniors, and also I know that you just had a junior in your life, your daughter,
Yep.
who is now a senior. So what kinds of goals did you set for those, for the juniors that you're working with?
Right. So, yes, I do have a daughter who's going through this process right now. So, I'm definitely seeing everything from a new side as a parent. But I think for juniors, it's really a good time going into junior year to kind of reassess what their goals might be and kind of figure out what really they would like to do in their remaining 2 years of high school that moves towards those goals. So first and foremost, academics are always important. The junior year is very important. Even with many of our students starting in a remote setting, those grades are going to be important. And so, making sure that you have solid classes in junior year and that you're doing really well academically is always first and foremost in the goals that I work with students through. We then, do talk about other types of goals as well, but I think the academics are really the first place to start.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, the junior year is not the year to take an easier curriculum. In fact, it's probably the year to take the toughest curriculum that you can handle
Yep.
and thrive in, not
Yep.
be overwhelmed, but be challenged. That's the balance that you're trying to kind of fit. And obviously good grades, right? I mean, do you ever kind of strategize with students about how to handle a heavier than ever before curriculum? I mean, some students are obviously, there might be like this top 1% of students who are brilliant and can take the heaviest curriculum and get A's and it's fine. But I think a lot of students, there's like a ramping up that has to take place for them. So I just kind of wonder if you ever strategize with them about that.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think we try and lay out both the junior and the senior year curriculum. For some reason, I think there's this pervasive myth out there that yes, the junior year is important, but that it's more important than senior year. I don't know why that myth exists, but I have sometimes seen students who really want to load up with many APs, more than, really their first time taking a lot of APs, and they want to load up a ton in junior year and take a relatively light senior year. And that to me is not the way to go. I think you want a balance of things that you can handle, as you mentioned. And so having a reasonable load that works for that particular student in junior year, and then continuing that rigor into senior year, to me makes a lot more sense. And, I always try and find out kind of if there's particular areas where they might struggle, how to best get through those classes in balance with extracurricular activities and other things, might mean being extra proactive about, reading the summer assignments and getting really prepared for that class, so that they're not feeling like they're behind when the class starts. So they're feeling like they're ready to go right when that class starts.
Yeah, I also try and get students to promise that they'll go see the teacher very early if they're struggling, but this is not a time to wait, so and also remember, in the junior year, this is probably where your recommendations are coming from,
right?
Like 90% of the time.
I do talk to students about that. I've just recently met with a few of my junior students and definitely said, okay, goals for junior year. One of the things you have to think about is the end of this year, you might be asking 2 of these teachers for letters of recommendation. And even more so that this is challenging in a remote world, you have to get to know these teachers and make sure that they know you so that they could write a full and thoughtful letter of recommendation for you. And so, thinking about that now, as opposed to suddenly finding out that information with a couple weeks left in the school year, I think is a good strategy, so that they can kind of set up, who they feel like they connected with most throughout the year, and then they're not surprised, particularly for my students that are quieter and, might have a tendency to kind of hang back. I think, it's kind of the time to say, yeah, you need to be actively involved. If you're having problems in a class, you need to reach out to that teacher. You need to raise your hand in class in whatever form that means. But you need to make sure that the teacher is seeing you as an active participant.
Mm-hmm. And actually, that can be very helpful if a student is struggling. I mean, I had a student who really struggled in math and kind of fought her way back with a lot of working with, like, using the teacher as an ally,
Yeah.
and ended up getting great comments from that teacher about how hard she'd worked on it, and even ended up getting like a recommendation. It was a B. She'd started with a D though.
Right.
And the teacher talked about how resilient she was, how willing she was to put in the extra work. So realize recommenders can come in a variety of places too.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
All right. What about extracurriculars? How should they be thinking about that?
So I say that, junior year is really, here we are midway through high school. And so it's a good time to kind of reassess your extracurricular activities and see which ones you really still love and enjoy and are working for you and are working with your schedule, and which ones sometimes would be ones to kind of let go, or to turn the focus a little bit more to the ones that are working for you. If a student's really looking at highly selective schools, I might also say, where are the activities where you can have impact, where you might be a leader, where you might be gaining some recognition from that activity, and assessing that at this point, I think is a good thing, because sometimes I think, particularly sometimes for our stronger students, they just kind of stay, in the same track of like, oh, I've done this every other year, so why don't I always do this again? And
Mhm.
sometimes it's keeping on to activities that, they don't really enjoy, or they're not really um, getting that much out of at this point. So it's a good time to look at all your activities, say what's working, and how might I have impact in those activities that are most meaningful to me in the coming years. I also do tend to have um, a fairly honest conversation with students who maybe don't have anything that is at all related to academic or career goals at this point in their extracurricular profile. And so, you know, I think thinking about, if you want to go into engineering, for example, do you have anything in your extracurricular profile that's showing that interest, or showing that you've taken that a step further beyond the classroom? And if they don't, there's still time in 11th and 12th grade to kind of pick up something along those lines. But I always talk about how the theme of an admissions application has to kind of fit together. And if it seems like your major is pulled out of left field and you've done nothing to explore it, then that can be a weakness in an application.
Mhm.
So we definitely talk about, what fits for those goals for extracurriculars.
Mhm. I always feel that's a little less important though for a student like me who was like history or political science or
Right.
English. But yeah,
Yeah.
engineering, computer science, nursing, these kinds of
Business.
things,
Yeah.
business.
Business.
Yeah, very, very important. Communications, join the yearbook. Why, come
Yeah.
on. Uh,
Absolutely. I mean, I was a psych major. The general liberal arts folks among us, um, I think that you can have a really broad ranging extracurricular list, but for the students who are looking at a very focused pre-professional track for college, showing that that interest has started already in high school, I think is a good thing. So,
Yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. All right. Anything else? I mean, I think there's those pesky SATs and ACTs, which, let's face
yeah.
it, this year look like they're going to be, they've been even more challenging recently
Right.
for the poor students. So what are your thoughts about that?
So for the testing, I'm advising my juniors to kind of just hang back a little bit. Let the seniors get their test on this fall, if there will be testing, if there is testing for those seniors, and don't feel rushed to get a test date in October or something, when the testing is likely going to be fairly uh, booked, in terms of seats. And so I'm advising students to kind of hang back a little and, wait until a February or March test date
Mhm.
for the junior class, which means that most of their preparation will be done in the winter. We should also have a little more clarity at that point as to whether some test centers are opening up again more broadly in the spring. And
Mhm.
frankly, we'll get some more sense from our admissions colleagues as to how this first round of test optional admissions is going. So I think, certainly plan to take tests still if you are a class, 11th grader or younger, but don't feel like it has to be done in the next 3 months. I would say more it's on kind of the 6-month plan, and that they should start to prepare kind of in the winter for some spring testing.
And so this doesn't apply to many students, but for the few that it does, SAT subject tests, I mean, a lot of schools have gone completely test blind. They won't even look at subject tests. A lot of the schools that used to recommend them have now gone to being truly test optional. They completely understand, at least for this year, why that's not going to happen. But what are you, I mean, it's kind of funny. I was talking to a student who's very interested in UPenn, had the profile, and I thought, and he was a junior this year, right? So I thought, you know, plan on taking it just in case, but it may turn out that you don't need it. What are your thoughts on test optional for the, or SAT subject tests for those students?
Yeah, I would say the same as what you did, that, you know, you perhaps might need it. A lot of students don't take subject tests until the spring anyway, because that might be naturally when it's the end of that course. So if you're taking a US history subject test, you would want to wait till the end of your US history class in May or June to take that exam. So yes, there's a possibility that that small percentage of students might still have to take it if they feel like it would boost their application profile. But they're probably not going to take it until later spring. And again, I would say right now, let's plan that you might have to take it, but again, wait till even later than the general test. I think the subject testing has become even less important now than the general testing. And most schools, as you mentioned, are test optional or test blind, even for the subject testing. So
yeah, or particularly for the subject testing.
Yeah,
really, yeah, even if you send it in, they're not going to look. Whereas most schools, not all, but most schools will still look at an SAT or ACT if you send it in. Yeah. All right. And what about researching potential majors or careers? Like what kinds of advice are you giving? I mean, I think already the extracurricular activities related to certain majors is already one way to do that. So let's kind of dig into that a little more.
Yeah, so in terms of researching colleges, so, you know, as you mentioned, it's been interesting going through this as a parent with my own daughter and having to pivot to, instead of visiting colleges in person, doing virtual visits and virtual meet and greets and interviews and those kinds of things. And I actually think that the benefit of that is sometimes you can more directly connect with someone in the admissions office than you might have at, you know, a big college fair that was attended by hundreds of people. So she has found some really nice individual connections by attending some of those virtual sessions. So whereas in a typical year, I would probably advise my juniors, get out, go see some colleges. It's not really an option right now. So I would say that in a virtual way, get out, go visit some college websites. And it may lead students in some ways to an even more informed decision. I think that sometimes students, when they go to actually physically visit a campus, they get a lot of comments of, you know, what the tour guide was wearing or what the food was like, and sort of forcing students to look at schools in this way might make them concentrate a little bit more on looking deeply at the academic profile, the academic pieces of the school, what the curriculum involves, what activities are on campus, which I actually think is overall a good thing, to, you know, look more into academics and pieces. So, but do attend some of those virtual open houses and events and try and find out some more about schools that way. And, you know, you can start your research spreadsheet now of schools that you visited or contacted. And, you know, I think take it from there. And that's kind of a good way to start the research process.
And follow colleges on social media. Those can give opportunities to form relationships with current students, ask them questions, that kind of thing. If you don't have a social media account, you can set up a Twitter account just to follow colleges, or Instagram, or I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to do this on TikTok. So I'm sticking with the old, card. So, all right. So I think that's it. Thank you so much, Mary Sue.
Thanks for having me, Sally.
All right. Thanks again to Alex Bickford and Kenan Dick of College Coach. And be sure to join us for our show next week. This show might be particularly interesting for international students, as our colleague Sai Samboon will join our host Beth Heaton to discuss what it was like to apply to college from overseas. And then following up, Cara Courtois, Notre Dame alumna, will join to discuss the Notre Dame supplemental essays. And remember, if you have questions about a particular topic, we may have already covered it. So obviously you should listen to everything that we put out there, but if you want to find a particular show, a particular topic on a particular show's broadcast date, you can please go to our blog page at blog.getintocollege.com. You'll be able to search there for particular blogs and getting in show summaries. And you can link to the shows there, and the full archive is available to you. Last, don't forget, we're here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. So check us out.